We could go about coloring this as normal. I don't recall what the shoes are on Mickey Mouse, so I'm just going to say that they're yellow because I'm going to make yellow shoes here. I'm going to select this. I'm going to color the inside of the shoe CMYK and make it a yellowy color, sort of that. I'm going to leave the soles white, and I can start to color this and see how it's going to look. I can come in and make it dimensional by adding additional elements to it. So I like to, for creating gradient meshes, use separate shapes. That way it's easy to change if I don't like the way it looks. And we'll move this gradient mesh maybe more towards the toe. And I'll put the gradient mesh inside that circle to make it into a gradient mesh shape. And now I can select individual points inside the gradient mesh. I only really have one point. I can add more if I want to. And I can back off of that a little bit to bring a specular highlight to that foot and make it look more dimensional, so it looks a little bit more 3D. And then the nice thing about doing it in a separate shape, not trying to do it in the shoe shape, is I won't have to redo the shoe if there's a mistake. I can just kind of select that shape, delete it, and then maybe draw in another shape using one of the Bezier style tools, the pen tool or the Bezier curve tool, whatever tool I elect to use. Kind of go around in here, can make a new shape if I think this shape would work better with my Bezier. Make sure it's the same color as my shoe. Then I can add the Bezier point to that. I can select the Bezier point that I want to change inside the gradient mesh and pull back off of it. And I can evaluate how that looks. Yeah, I think I like the look of the second one a little bit better as far as giving it dimensionality. Okay, so I'm going to look at some of the other areas where I may be able to make some additional edits. And I think it also helps to understand how the artwork is created. So understanding the cut paper idea, we have a circle here that's basically a piece of white cut paper. We have a circle here that's basically a piece of black cut paper that's on top of it. So really we have a very large shape here that's not, separated into that black and white. So I think when you understand that, it'll also allow you to make a little bit easier edits. So I'm going to come in and color this as I normally would. We're going to make the color of Mickey's pants red. Again, I want to work with CMYK color. So I'm going to come in here and make red pants. Looks good to me. And I think what I want to do is, again, I want to add that bit of dimensionality. So using the tip from before, you can either use a geometric shape or we could use the pen tool. I think this time around I'm just going to use a circle shape because this sort of belly body area looks to be really close to a circle. So I'll kind of do this type of a thing. And I'll maybe move that circle around a little bit. And we need to change the stacking order of this a bit, and we probably need to change this artwork because the hand that's here, as far as the cut paper idea, that's not how it works. So we kind of hit Command Y here. We can see that this shape, would encroach on that. So what I have is this. It seems to be kind of, and I'll move this shape a little bit. We'll play around with it a little bit. There we go. It seems to be in front of the button, so we need to change that stacking order or that layering order. And we could do it using the object arrange, or we can come into our menu here for our layers and sublayers. And I've been working on one layer, and I really do recommend to students to do multiple layers. In order for this to really be an effective illustration, you may want to do a pant layer, you may want to do all these other layers that would add layers to your artwork, but make it much more organized and easier to edit. So that being said, I've got the ellipse here that I just created, and I can see it's at the top of the stacking order. And I want to get it behind several other things. I want to get it behind basically the buttons that were there. And so I'm going to try and move this order down a little bit. I've got to grab the layer. I want to make sure I don't grab the button. And I can see now it's behind the buttons. If I move it back another layer, okay, a little bit further back in that order, little bit further back. I want to get it behind these two black buttons though. So I'm going to click and drag to get it back behind those buttons. So the stacking order is going to become very important for you when you start to do these embellishments as well. I've got that circle on there, and I think I'm going to create a gradient mesh. I'm looking at where I think some of these shapes need to go. I think maybe, you know, the sort of highlight for that belly base end, if the light's kind of coming up, would be around here. So I'm going to go ahead and do it slightly above the center line and click a button. And I'm going to go and change at that point. You see that this mesh point, this Bezier mesh point, is actually selected, and I can back off these colors. Now, a nice trick is to put your finger on the shift key before you drag on these sliders, and it'll drag them both proportionately. So I can get that little bit of specular highlight. I can move this point around and add additional points. I added an additional point too quickly. I want to move the point first. So I'm going to use the direct or the white arrow tool to grab that point and move it up a little bit. And we can change the duration of that blend by pulling on the handles. If I pull down, you're going to see the duration's a little bit longer, so it's more of the frontal area of the belly. If we move it a little bit shorter here, the handle, you'll see that it ends a little bit shorter, so it's a little bit darker down here. We can go in and try experimenting with changing some of these other points. Here at the bottom, it might, for instance, be a little darker, so we might want to introduce a little bit of black into that. Not a lot, just a little bit to kind of color it. And I can look at that, and that doesn't quite look right. It makes it look like it's a separate shape now. So I definitely don't want to do that. I'm going to undo or Command Z to make sure that it looks the way I want it to. Maybe if I need to do a little bit more volume on Mickey's sort of shape here, I still need to create another object. So I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to come down with my pen tool. I'm going to trace down here, and I'm going to do this as a separate shape. And I can see the stacking order probably isn't quite the way I want it, but I'm going to first do my gradient mesh by adding a mesh point here, and I think I want it to be darkest towards the bottom. So I may add a point here. And that's the point at which I will add some black to it. I can click off and I can see, does that kind of look the way I want it? Yeah, I'm fairly happy with that. You see this process of sort of give and take, push and pull to create artwork that really meets the communication goal of the piece. Again, as always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.